Welcome to Condor 3 Epics. You're about to experience an hours-long soaring flight in the ASW-28 Standard Class sailplane. Along the way, I'll share some background on that high-performance 15-metre span ship. In real life, I've flown the standard Lebel, but this ASW would certainly have an edge in performance over the Lebel, I think. There's a concise overview of the task we're going to fly coming up in just a moment. I'm Tim Parrish, and I hope you enjoy checking this all out. This flight over the Alice Springs landscape has 6 legs, indicated by blue lines on the map. Each one turns red as I talk about it. The first red one's up there already, down near the bottom. An aero tow takes us towards a gap in the hills, not far from the Alice Springs township. We release and almost immediately cross the start line on our way to Slopesaw the Hills and proceed on task. Near the end of the leg, it takes a couple of attempts to contact a usable thermal. After rounding turn point 1 at Ross River, we head north in thermals that are still developing in strength and height. Near the end of the leg, we have to avoid some airspace that goes all the way to ground. After rounding turn point 2 at Alcoota Station, we continue nor-northeast in some quite strong thermals. However, as we approach the turn point, it's clear that it's surrounded by bad weather. Due to the low cloud base, we tiptoe in, being careful not to squander altitude. After rounding turn point 3 at Utopia, we find a couple of short climbs on the way out, to the south. When finally in the clear, we turn back on track and scoot along, choosing only the strongest thermals and often working them up to cloud base, which is now over 10,000 feet above sea level. After rounding turn point 4 at Ulamu, we soon have to slow down a bit to safely traverse a sizable blue hole. The air is completely dead in there. After rounding turn point 5 at Tillmouth Well, right in the middle of the blue hole, we press on, knowing that getting home involves staying under airspace ceilings as they step down. Eventually, we divert south to contact a line of hills that keep us airborne, just under the ceiling. Well, we made it back before sunset, but watch right to the end to see just how close it ended up being. So now it's time to hop in and start our pre-takeoff checks. Here we go. Checking controls for full and free movement, stick and rudder pedals. Harness is tight and secure, and looking out there, just looking at the air brakes, we need them closed and locked. No flaps on this aircraft. Outside, bit of a crosswind from the right, trim, full forward. Instruments, got our flight computer running in the middle of the panel there, and our altimeter is set to the appropriate value above sea level for this airfield. Actually, it's an airport, Alice Springs Airport. And canopy needs to be closed and locked. And there we can hear the Super Cub starting up, coming across. Be here in a second or two. There it is. Now we just need someone to pick up the wing. And we're heading off. While we're on tow, just a few words about this channel. It's all about a wide variety of free flight experiences in the Condor 3 soaring simulator, in contrast to the online racing scene favoured by the younger set. Video by video, I'll show you every default aircraft, some aircraft I've flown personally, a variety of landscapes, all the different lift sources, many weather variations, you name it. I try to show you something new each and every time. And we'll be releasing very shortly. using that yellow knob just to the left of my hand there. There we go. And there's an airspace warning, but that's alright, we're a few 100 feet under the limit. And we're off on the first leg of our task. We've left the start line behind. We crossed it almost immediately after releasing from the tow plane because we're heading for these hills straight ahead of us. And we've got ample height actually to get over them. We just need to slip over the crest and get into the slope lift on the far side. And here we are. We've got a roughly 12 knot airflow from left to right across these hills. Just glancing up there to see if there's any clouds forming. Anyway, we'll stay on these hills for a while. They're handy because we can stay below the airspace ceiling while working the slope lift. And while we're continuing with that, I might just mention a few design features of this aircraft. Nothing too detailed. A couple of not so obvious ones to start with. The wings have actually got two different airfoil sections. Laminar flow airfoils, and another rather cool feature is blowhole technology. So that's there for boundary layer control. Helps the airflow to stick to the wing and increases efficiency. And in common with a lot of, as you can see here, in common with a lot of other modern sailplanes, the ASW28 has those winglets on the tips. So that helps to reduce wingtip vortices. Again, that will help the efficiency and increase the overall lift-to-drag ratio of the aircraft. And I'm still glancing around looking for thermal lift. Sooner or later we're going to have to get off this slope and get some decent height, otherwise we won't be able to make the hop to the first turn point. Safety features. The cockpit of the ASW28 is designed for high crash worthiness, and it's also been made comfortable for tall pilots apparently. The landing gear has a crush zone that absorbs energy and that protects the fuselage in a very heavy landing. And finally, one small feature, upward hinging instrument panel. That makes things a little safer in the event of a crash. And we're looking around. We really need a bit of thermal lift at this point. And it looks like we're onto something here. It's cranking in. Still a little early in the day for good consistent thermal lift, but we'll keep trying. And at this point we've worked some lift fairly high and we've bumped into the ceiling, or just a couple of 100 feet short, so we'll need to straighten up as we've done here, and we're just heading straight for the turn point now. And while we're on our way there, I might just mention about the rigging of this ship. All the controls connect automatically. That includes the ailerons, air brakes, elevator, and the water ballast connections as well. And we're bumping into airspace once again, almost getting close. And we're about, what's it say, 16 k's short of Ross River. There's a small dirt strip at Ross River. We should just catch a glance of it as we go around the turn point. Once we get to Ross River, the airspace goes up by quite a margin, and we'll be able to pick up the pace a little, particularly as the lift gets stronger. And here we are, quite close now. Let's see if we can spot that strip out to the left there, down there somewhere. We'll be just turning the sector now. There it's gone green on the flight computer. And here we are, just exiting the turn point sector. And we're heading off on the second leg. Found some lift already. It's looking quite healthy. It's getting a little later in the day now, so the thermals are a little easier to work. Getting some quite decent height as well. We'll see if we can work this up to around 10,000 or so before we leave. Terrain is still quite hilly around here, although we're heading in a northerly direction when we cruise, so we'll soon see it flatten out. And we've managed to enter a fairly new thermal here. There's no cumulus above us just yet. Alright, now we're cruising north. I'll just throw in a few performance figures here for the ASW 28. Its best glide ratio is around 45 to 1, and that puts it in the performance bracket of some of the older open class sailplanes. I remember from the 80s. Minimum sink for this glider is, with no water ballast, is about 1.1 knots. That's 0.56 metres per second. And as far as V&E, that's velocity never exceed. It's a pretty handy 154 knots. That's 285 kilometres per hour at sea level. That's the official number. If you look at the airspeed indicator in this machine though, you'll see that it shows something like about 146, I think it is, knots. That's the correct value for the 18 metre version of the ASW 28. This machine's also got a pretty decent range of wing loading, from 30 kilograms per square metre right up to 50 kilograms per square metre. And at that higher value, that corresponds to 210 litres of water ballast. So it's quite good in weak and strong soaring conditions. And here we are, pushing the nose down a bit. You can see there on the flight computer we're right next to a area of airspace that goes right down to ground level, so we're just keeping an eye on that, trying to keep our distance. Just a small diversion really from our track. And here we are heading into Alcuta station. Turn point number 2, and as you can see down there, it's terrain is very flat now, although still quite challenging as far as outlandings are concerned. You can see the road down there, a wide dirt road. It's possible to land down there. Otherwise you're looking at clay areas. In the wet weather the clay gets very soft and smooth, and then it dries out in summer and becomes quite a landable surface. And now we're approaching the turn point. Less than a kilometre away. Wait for it to, there it goes, it's gone green, so now we're heading off, leaving Alcuda station behind. And we're heading off on the third leg of the task, pushing on into the flat terrain to the north. And there's some very good thermals out here. I'm just tucking up under a nice cumulus cloud right now. Very healthy climb rate. And we're around 9,000, so we'll be aiming to work a band somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000, I think, for the rest of the flight, or most of the rest of the flight, for the next couple of legs anyway. Now, some more background on this aircraft. On the ASW-28, it was first flown in May 2000, and it replaced the ASW-24 in Schleicher's production line. And as well as this 15-metre version, there's also the ASW-28-18 that's available. That has interchangeable wingtips, so you can fly at either 18 metres or 15 metres depending on conditions and your personal preference, I guess. And as well, there's the ASW-28-18E. That's the motorised self-launching version that features a retractable sustainer engine. That's the Solo 2350 two-stroke. That would also bump the price up quite a bit. Looking out ahead, we can see some rain in the distance, so that bad weather that we know is around the turn point is becoming obvious. It's not just the weather, it's also the cloud base is very much lower, so we have to be careful. I hope you're enjoying this flight so far. I'm actually curious whether anyone older than me is following along. Send me a comment if you can beat the age of 66. Also, if you hit the like button, that will help get this content out to more of us oldies, as I was described by a landscape developer recently. Now things are getting interesting. We're passing some quite intense rainfall. There'll soon be rain all around. Still some distance out from the turn point. As you can see, I'm flying quite conservatively. We don't want to burn too much height because on our way out, heading for the better weather, it could be a bit of a glide to the first decent climb. The distance between thermals would be bigger in the better weather, so we don't want to be caught out. So we'll just tiptoe in. 13 k's. Looks like we'll arrive with nearly 5,000 feet above ground at the turn point. Hopefully that's just enough. I think that's some thunder. It's definitely thunder. A bit closer there. Oh, and a lightning strike. And we've made it to the turn point. We'll try and turn fairly tightly around that airstrip at Utopia, so we don't waste any time getting out of here. It's gone green, and here we go. Now we have to get out of here, and it's raining. You can hear the raindrops hitting the canopy there, and they'll also be hitting our wings, unfortunately, getting them a bit wet, which we don't really want. We're not much above 5,000 feet above mean sea level here, which means we're closer to 3,000 or so above the ground, so it's a little bit of an anxious time. We could really do with a climb, even a short one. Would be better than nothing right now, so we need to head for a dark spot and get a bit of height, trying to fly about best LD with the full load of water we've got on board, which would be between 60 and 70 knots, closer to 70 actually. Now we're not much above 4.5, so we are very keen to work this cloud coming up. Let's see what we can do here. That's sounding encouraging. We really need to gain a couple of thousand feet to feel a bit safer at this point. The ground's still not so far away. Just trying to centre this. At least there's more lift not far away, so I think we'll have a look under these clouds coming up. They look quite promising, and we're starting to leave the area of the worst weather. So it should soon be possible to gain quite a bit more height. In fact, at this point we're over 8,000, approaching 9 actually, so we're on the way. Since things are looking up a bit, I might just say a few words about the competition history of this aircraft. It was apparently designed specifically to compete against the Rollin Schneider LS8 and the Schempp Discus 2 in standard class. It's got quite a good track record too, this machine. It's done very well in national and world gliding championships with a good balance of high-speed cruise and climbing ability. Okay, we've travelled a few more k's along, and now we're circling left under a likely looking cloud, and we're over 10,000. Looks like it might go a little higher. If it stays strong, you might as well stay in it. And there we are, the flat terrain. Very flat terrain, stretching out ahead, and we're quite away because of the fact we had to dodge that bad weather. We're a long way from track, but we'll gradually get closer as we head straight to the turn point. While we're approaching this cloud, I might just mention a few bits of pilot feedback. Pilots frequently describe the ASW-28 as being on rails during flight, which refers to its precise, agile and light control feel. I don't think it's anything new though. I remember the CFI of my club back in the 70s describing the standard Lebel in much the same terms. Despite its high performance, the ASW-28 is noted for a very forgiving stall and spin behaviour, and one pilot reported being able to thermal it near the buffet stage just like a vintage glider. I can remember getting a bit too close to the buffet stage in a vintage glider once, to the point of an incipient spin. It was so noisy, didn't feel that slow. Another thing about the ASW-28 is the automatic control hookups are much appreciated by pilots. Make the ship really quick and easy to rig. So looking at the flight computer there, we're certainly getting closer to track now. With any luck we'll end up on the upwind side before long. It's always good to fly on the upwind side of track, because if you stop to thermal it'll drift you back in the right direction. And looking down there, it's a fairly rare sight, seeing that collection of square fields. Well, not fields, but just cleared areas, I guess, for some reason. Some of them would be landable, I guess. Talking about landable areas, it looks like a bit of a clay pan off there to the right. If you're in trouble. And here we are, accelerating up to cruise speed again. 100, 110, it's appropriate. Just over 8,000 here, so we could do with a bit of a top up when we reach this cloud. If it's strong enough. Maybe it wasn't, because this is a bit further along and we're going to the left this time, and this thermal looks quite consistent, quite strong. So, 85.5 k's to the turn point. But we still need another 3,000 feet of climb to make it. A few little bumps appearing in the terrain down below. And doesn't that look quite picturesque down there? Once again, we'll need to top up our altitude. And the fact that we've got the shadows crossing the panel like that, it's a bit of an indication that it's getting later in the afternoon, although the lift still seems to be quite strong. Some ranges down below. With any luck, some of those slopes should kick off something a little stronger. Although this lift seems a little mediocre, we'll probably have to move on pretty soon. Not to worry though, we're at 10,000, so we have ample height. But we'll just straighten up here, shove the nose down and get a move on to somewhere better. Like this. Maybe that was just the core we flew through there. This is possibly more like it, a little more consistent, I think. Yeah, this is definitely better. Climbing past 10,000 once again. And we've got the display zoomed out a little bit so we can see the turn point coming up. So we'll be there before long. That's the airstrip at Utopia. You can see the sun straight ahead of us there. It's definitely getting later in the afternoon, so we can expect the lift strength to start dropping off before too long now. And here's the turn point. I think we might miss the I think we're going round it on the wrong side, but never mind. There we go, we've entered the sector, so we'll just throw a turn to the left, and here we go, heading back in the general direction of Alice Springs once again. So we're heading off on the fifth leg, and there's still some quite decent lift around, although the afternoon is dragging on. You can see the sun right there, not that far from the horizon. We'll take this up as high as we can. And we're on track again. Been up for 6 hours, quite a while, and making about 125 knots across the ground, because we've got quite a tailwind component at this point. 12 knots behind us. and due to the strength of that lift we're still cruising quite fast. Got some good lift here. And now we're exiting, getting the nose down while we still have a bit of lift. And you can just see the salt lakes coming into view ahead of us there, and it looks air's pretty dead in that region. So this cloud here might be our last climb, and we better make it a good one so we can get across. It looks like it's going to be too far to divert around, so we should be able to make it straight across. Now here we go, heading straight across. Very dead air. Flying at a conservative speed so we don't waste altitude. Need to be able to climb up on those cumulus in the distance there. Now we're approaching Tillmouth Well. We'll be in the turnpoint sector in just a few seconds by the looks of it. And there we are, it's gone green, so we'll just divert to the left, and now we're heading towards Alice Springs Airport. And now we're on the final stretch. And we'll soon be approaching the far side of that dead patch, that large blue hole. Although it looks like we might have been a little conservative, we didn't lose that much height after all. We're down to about 7,800. So we should easily be able to pick up some lift. And here we are, this actually looks quite decent. In fact, I think we might have found a new thermal with no cloud above us at all, just yet. So despite the time of day, we've managed to find a reasonably strong one. So we've been in the air for 6 hours and 38 minutes so far, and averaged 50, just over 50 knots for the entire task at this point. Now, as we continue on, we're going to have to make a decision at some point to head off track and attempt to contact a line of hills that leads into Alice Springs, because the airspace will continue to step down as we approach Alice Springs Airport, and it's going to be hard to stay low enough if we don't find ridge lift. For the time being though, we can still top up a little bit of height. How's that for a landscape? Very rugged and arid. And some slightly hillier terrain is starting to come into view. And far in the distance, right on the horizon, are those lines of hills. Some quite irregular hilly terrain below us, but now we've contacted the range that I had in mind for making our way back towards the airport. And we've got a few hundred feet in reserve by the looks of it, so we can push along until we contact the crest. And there's the Vario starting to show some lift again. And we can actually maintain a good 100 knots, so that's good. We don't want to waste too much time getting back with the sun getting lower by the minute. And talking about airspace, here's that warning coming up again. In fact, we're going to have to push under this. There we go, we're now under 3.5, which is where the ceiling is. And in a moment we'll decide to edge out to the right and make a dash for the slope over there. And here we are, we're approaching it now. In fact, this line of hills is somewhat higher than the one we were just on, so as we regain the crest along here, we'll definitely see that airspace warning again. We'll have to keep an eye on that. 3,500 is the limit. There's the township of Alice Springs off to our left, just glancing off to our port tip there. I used to live over there on the far side, and I used to look across at these hills and wonder what it would be like to slope saw them. And what do you know? Now I am. It's time to drop the water. The airport's just a few minutes away now, so we'll try and get rid of the ballast. Now, we could have made a beeline for the finish line, which is a little quicker, but this is not a race and we're a bit short on altitude, so we're actually going to head straight for the circuit joining area. And we've made it across the finish line. Alright, we better do our pre-landing check in a moment. There's the asphalt runway there. Flaps not on this aircraft, undercarriage down and locked. Speed, we're just under 60 knots, that's good. We've still got a little bit of water on board. There it goes. We should be rid of all of that by the time we get to base leg. There's the threshold, so we'll be turning pretty soon. Here we go. Just looking at the trace on the flight computer there to get a nice square turn onto base leg. See how low the sun was just then. It's pretty late, but we've made it. Turning onto final. And we'll just need a bit of air brake. And there's a slight crosswind still, but we'll just hold it off and kick it straight there, and there we are, we're down. So here we are, rolling to a stop after our epic flight all around Central Australia. I hope you enjoyed that flight. Subscribe now so you don't miss out later. To keep things interesting, the next video will be in another part of the world, but I'm not saying where at this point. It'll be epic, of course.